Lexy Show Fashion That Gives a Damn. This week I am joined by the program manager for the Footwear Collective. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Morgan Jin. For those that might not be familiar with the Footwear Collective, can you explain what you guys do?
Absolutely. So, the Footwear Collective, we're a nonprofit that is focused on building a more sustainable fashion industry, one that is better for business, but most importantly, better for the planet. And the way that we do that is we work with leading footwear brands and retailers. When we think about the challenges that exist in the footwear industry today, when it comes to sustainability, they're really, really big challenges. And things that no one brand can solve by themselves. So at the Footwear Collective, by bringing brands together, we are identifying opportunities for collaboration so that progress can advance at a much faster speed. And the brands that we're working with are ones that probably many of your listeners are familiar with. People like New Balance, Brooks, Crocs, Reformation, Steve Madden, brands who see this, that they know that we need collaboration at an unprecedented level to really start to move the industry forward and develop the systems, the infrastructure that we need to create a more sustainable footwear industry.
Amazing. That is so awesome. And I definitely know a lot of those
Yeah.
brands. So I feel like that makes me kind of change my point of view on those brands too, where I'm like, it's awesome to hear that they're, working towards a greener future and collaborating with you guys.
And it's not every day that you see what are kind of quote unquote competitors working
Yeah.
together, but I think that they understand that we need this collaboration to drive the industry forward. We sort of talk about in circularity, you've got small circles and then you've got big circles. And small circles are kind of like smaller silos where this work is happening. But for us to really be able to move the work forward, we need big circles. We need people who are all working together to
Yeah.
create circular systems because we can't do it alone.
Well, that's something that I feel like really encouraging specifically in the sustainability space is like, and I was talking to two beach cleanup
Mm.
organizations in Los Angeles, and I don't know, my friend was like, "Oh, we work with them all the time, like no stress about talking about how you're working with them." And I was like, I found that so interesting because I was like, so sweet of her to step in and be like, "It's fine that we're competitors. We love what they do." And I was like, I don't know, I just found that so interesting because it's like, even though you guys are two organizations doing the exact same things, you work together on it. And that's something that I'll find a lot in the sustainability space where it's like, since we are truly working towards like a goal and not necessarily like revenue or like whatever. It's like we want to fund this research, source this research, get this research. We want to have a greener planet. We want to be more sustainable. We want to be this. Like, since we're all working towards like a greener goal, I find
Exactly.
it so, I don't know, just encouraging when like I'll hear things like that where it's like, no, competitors are literally working together to get to that goal. So,
We need them too. Like there's this saying, all the boats rise with the tide. And I think that is like so important for
yeah.
like sustainability work. Like we actually need everyone at the table thinking about this and trying to solve this. And one like important distinction is we're not here to like bring all these brands together to create the best shoe. Like no, those are competitive areas and each of those brands are going to be going and creating those shoes. But what are the areas where they can collaborate together of what we call pre-competitive? So not creating the best shoe, but thinking about what is the infrastructure that we need to be able to collect shoes and what is the innovation we need to be able to create pathways to recycle shoes. So kind of we have a very clear distinction of where we collaborate together at the Footwear Collective to make sure it's a safe space for all.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, speaking of partnerships, congrats on wrapping the Footwear Futures Project. For listeners who might be hearing about it for the first time, what was the project all about?
Thank you so much. We were really excited to get Footwear Futures Project out into the world. The project launched on October 1st of 2025 and really set out to start to take a step towards figuring out what does the future of footwear circularity look like? Where are the gaps that exist today? And what do we need to do to be able to move this forward? And so with circularity, when you touch one piece, you touch all the pieces. So the first thing was to collect shoes. And so we started the project in Los Angeles, California for a number of reasons. LA was the right choice, which could dive more into later. And we partnered with Goodwill of Southern California to collect shoes. So in the month of October, we directed consumers to Goodwill and we said, bring all of your shoes. Bring shoes that are in any condition, and the shoes that still have life left in them, those will be kept in the Goodwill circulation. They will keep the shoes that have life left in them. They'll give them new life through reuse. And the shoes that are truly worn out at the end of their life, there is not another life for them. Those are coming to the Footwear Futures Project. And in the Footwear Futures Project, we're testing recycling pathways for those shoes. So the first step was collection. We worked with Goodwill on that to collect 30,000 pounds of footwear. So that's roughly 24,000 pairs, which I just had the privilege to see the shoes recently. And it's a lot of shoes. To visualize it is really, really cool. And so from there, we're collecting data on the shoes. We're understanding kind of really the condition of the shoes, what kind of maybe led to the shoes being end of life, and not reusable, and to be able to understand kind of like as we think about shoes at the end of their life, what are we seeing there? And then next, we've identified a slew of different innovators who will be processing the shoes. So for us, when we went to build this project, it was really important that we were working with existing partners. Like are not here to reinvent the wheel or to start from the ground up. Like finding people who are already doing this work and working with them. So people like Goodwill. Our sortation partner is an LA-based social enterprise called Homeboy Threads. They're receiving the shoes, processing the shoes, taking them from this big bag of mixed shoes to kind of sorting them based on material type so that the recyclers can more easily process them. And then we have a handful of recyclers who are receiving those shoes and processing them to be able to recover the materials that are in our footwear and deliver them to both open loop solutions, so taking the rubbers, the foams, the leathers, and finding other pathways outside of footwear for those materials.
Hmm.
And then at the same time, we're also exploring closed loop solutions. So how can we get these materials back into footwear to really be able to create a closed loop system at the same time? So really, this project is all about research. It's
Hmm.
about understanding what's possible, what we need to do, and what it looks like leveraging what we call collective action. What does this look like? This is not just a one brand take back program. We're accepting any brand in any condition. So those results are still coming in, but it's been really exciting so far. And this is just the first step. LA is where we started, but we are definitely seeing ourselves expand this program.
That's so
Hopefully,
amazing. I think it's so important because I feel like when we talk about sustainability in the fashion industry, we talk a lot about like the textiles and the clothes and well, that's great and that's what I talk about all the time. I feel like we're not talking about necessarily like what we do with our shoes as much. And so I think that that is so important and it's funny because like I would say all of my shoes, maybe like not one or two are like from are thrifted or from a vintage
interesting.
some sale or something. And oftentimes, unfortunately, I will wear them once and then I'll realize why they were thrift or like at the Goodwill. It's because like maybe like the heel's falling apart or like the base isn't glued well and like whatever. And I will take my pieces to a cobbler or shoe repair, whatever you want to call it, and get them fixed. But I think
Mm,
that this isn't something that kind of in what we're living in right now in 2025, like I don't think that fixing the things you already have is quite as practiced as just
agreed.
throwing it out and getting a new one or redonating it and getting a new one, which is just like, okay, well, when you donate things to, a thrift store, to a Goodwill, whatever, like I always really encourage people to think this through. Like, is this something that is going to actually be resold, or are you just dropping everything you own off at Goodwill? Because then once it's dropped off and it can't be resold, like it's going to go to a landfill anyways, unfortunately. Um, and it's just not quite as necessarily effective as we think it is. It's like with recycling, like how you have to be very specific about the things that you recycle because, like we're sorting through it and like only so much of it can actually end up being recycled. So it's just like it's like that with the amount of clothes that, a place like Goodwill gets because they get so much of it. And so it's like, oh, like it kind of breaks my heart a little when I'm like, no, please don't take your like falling apart shoes to Goodwill because they're also not going to be able to do anything about it until now.
For Futures Project. But I love that. I don't hear often that people are repairing their shoes, but exactly like what you said, like think about not all shoes make sense to get repaired, but the shoes that you really, really love, like that's just not a practice that we do enough today. Like it's possible to resole shoes. Your sh white sneakers that you love that got a little dirty, it's possible to have them cleaned and to
Yeah.
look brand new. And I think that's like a a, a growing conversation is how we need to pull on the lever of repair even more so in our closets and in our own sustainable fashion journeys. But when there's items that maybe can't be repaired, being able to find those solutions for recycling so that we can recover the materials that are in our shoes that still
Mhm.
have value. Because sometimes I've had the honor to look at many of the shoes that we've collected, and some of those guys are like truly, truly end of life. They have probably had a very full life. It's time to figure out, how can we like responsibly dispose of those shoes. But I loved what you touched on there of like not everyone knows the volumes that Goodwill gets. And
Mhm.
we were thinking of who to partner with for this project. We explored a couple of different options, but really we wanted to find a place where people, consumers today, were already going,
Yeah.
they're already bringing their shoes, and Goodwill just seemed like an obvious solution. There's this really great stat that says 80%, it's a little over 80% of consumers in North America live within 10 miles of a Goodwill. So when you think about like the potential for scale and a program that we want to continue to grow, like that accessibility is so important when you're thinking about collection programs. But at the same time, similar to what you just spoke about, I think that there's consumers are aware that shoes that are might have holes in them or might not seem like they can be reusable, that they don't feel good donating those
Mhm.
shoes. So like through this program, we wanted to be able to build it in a way that you can trust that you can bring any of your shoes to Goodwill. The ones that have life left in them, they will be given that life. And then the ones that are like truly end of life will be able to make their way into the right hands and to be processed.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think that's one of the take back bags that I'll
Mm.
use. I believe with a lot of these take back bags that I really like Homeboy Threads has one. And
Yeah.
like I forget how many pounds of clothes you can send in it, but it's a lot of clothes and it'll go and I've been to, the warehouse in for Homeboy Threads in LA and I you can really see like they have one section where it's like, okay, these are all the things that we're reselling. They have photo areas where they have like ring lights and like white backgrounds so they can take like good high quality photos of these clothes that they're going to resell. And then they have like their whole recycling unit in the back. And it has like barrels of like these clothes are insane, like so many
Yeah.
clothes. And so it's like I think it's also helpful to know sometimes when you're like donating something, again, that aspect of, okay, well, I know that if it has life in it, maybe
Mhm.
someone else will be able to just extend that life rather than just like already, having it be recycled anyways. Because like why not if there's life in it, give it the life it deserves, I guess. What about shoes here? But that's what I think. I'm very obsessed with my shoes. Someone once called me the sustainable Carrie Bradshaw, and I have never forgotten that. I was like, thank you. That's what I'm gonna go with now.
Get that like
But like,
on a plaque.
no, literally, I'm making it a thing. But um, like it's I feel like it's just like nice to know that not only will it just also have that life, but then also if it doesn't have any life, like you know that it's gonna truly not just end up somewhere, it's gonna be used for research and that's just I feel like just like an added like bonus when I don't know, I get like a little bit of guilt I feel like when I take things to a thrift store because I'm just like, oh, they get so much stuff. But in this case scenario, I felt really good dropping off my shoes because I was like, I know either way, whether this is going to be resold or researched, uh,
Yeah.
it's going to go to
And
some.
you got to participate in the Footwear Futures Project, which was really
Thank
fun.
you. Thank
But I love what you're saying because when I reflect on my own closet, I've got a lot of shoes that are like super worn, like the shoes I wear every single day or all the time. And then I've got some shoes that I bought, and then I'm like, what was I thinking? Those were not actually for me, but they're in really good condition. I've like hardly ever worn them. So like those are the shoes that Goodwill is really able to
you.
keep in
Yeah.
circulation and give life. But then I think it's those worn out shoes that I hear all the time talking to people about Footwear Futures Project of like, I don't know what to do with my shoes that like I've used and I don't wear them anymore. And like I've heard so many people tell me I'm just storing them in my closet until I find a solution for
Yeah.
them. We want to be able to help find that solution and scale that solution because I think it's a pain point for a lot of consumers
Yeah.
today.
No, completely. I just had that exact conversation where my lovely boyfriend, I always say, is definitely more sustainable than me because he will wear things to the point that they get so disgusting and like broken down. And I don't think he like realizes that he's doing it because he's just like, oh, I like it, so I'm re-wearing it. So he had these slippers from Allbirds that I had gotten him like, I don't even know, years ago. And he wears them like every single day inside the house as like indoor slippers and whatever. And he like came to me the other day and he was like, they're like deteriorating at this point. Like there's like a million holes in them. Like I have worn them down and I don't know what to do with it. And I was like, I love that you said that because I have the perfect thing.
Nice.
Perfect timing.
I love that. Oh, it is such a sad feeling when your like favorite shoes
Yeah.
I've had like the soles start to come off or the heel, and that's where it's like hopefully if repair is an option for that, you can pull on that lever. But I mean, our shoes, they're with us all the time. They're kind of like in a way our main way of transportation. And one really fun thing that we did a part of the Footwear Futures project is we offered a way for people to share their shoe stories on our website. So tell us about the shoes that they hiked a mountain in, or they wore them as a bridesmaid, or just like they wore them to every single party they went to, like just like all of the like moments and memories that our shoes travel through
Hmm.
with us. Like, so that was like really cool to be able to just like read people's shoe stories and hear like this journey their shoes took before they like said these are time to get rid of.
Yeah. No, there's like that Sex and the City episode where she is like going through her closet and reliving, or like Hannah Montana did it too. I'm sure many other shows have done it. Those are just the two examples that I can think of. But they're like going through their closet and like there's like a montage of like, oh, I wore this dress here. And that's how I literally feel every time I go through my closet. I'm like I don't want to get rid of it because like what if I need it or I wore it to this event and like it's so special to me and like whatever. But realistically, I haven't worn it in a year and it's not, like why is it in my closet still? But I love like I just love I don't know. I'm a big I think hearing the story of things and like when I compliment someone's outfit, I love when they're like, "Oh, thanks, I got it from this vintage store in this area and you should totally check it out and like you would like it." And then I don't know, that's how at least I always when someone will be like, "Oh, I like your shoes." And I'm like, "Oh my God, well, thank you. I got them from this vintage sale. It happens once a year in downtown LA. You should totally go." And I just like spark up a conversation about it. And I think, I don't know, that's just hearing those stories. I feel like that really makes us care more about our clothing and like inherently is a little bit more sustainable because when you have those stories and you have those things, you're like, you know, it lived a good life and now I feel good about, you know, maybe giving it to someone else to have that life or it lived a good life and I don't it can't live anymore. I've worn it to the bitter end. And so I think like getting connected with our clothes and getting connected with just like our stuff honestly is a better practice than like I feel like how our mindset is kind of nowadays where it's like, oh, let me buy some like $3 thing, wear it once and then get rid of it. Like I want to feel connected, I guess, to the things I own.
Because the shoes you have stories in mean you wore them a
Yeah.
lot, got the use out of those shoes versus like, shoes we buy. I'm guilty of this, like having shoes I buy and then only wear once or never wear again. Like I
Yeah.
don't have a connection to those shoes in the same way that I have like a connection with the shoes I wore for my first 5K or I hiked this mountain in them. Like you're just reminded of those
Yeah,
memories with them.
exactly.
That's if anyone wants to go share their shoe stories, we are still collecting them
Uh,
on our
don't
website.
mind
So
if I
if you have a
do.
pair of shoes that have been well loved and you want to share their story.
I love it. I know what I'll do after this. So you mentioned that you kicked this off right here in Los Angeles. Why start in LA? Was there something about the city or its community that made it a perfect place to launch?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we were thinking about where should we kick off the Footwear Futures Project, where would be a good place to start to test this model? California just felt like this really obvious solution. When we think about policy that exists in the United States right now, California is the first state to pass a bill. This we call it California State Bill 707 about textile EPR, and that does include footwear. So the political environment
Mhm.
in California made it a right place to build a model like this, where that type of policy will give momentum for programs like ours. And then just in general, I mean, you're based in LA. I've had the chance to travel several times. It's a very like eco-conscious
Yeah.
community. And when we were thinking about who is going to participate in the first leg of this program, we were thinking about those people who we talked to and were telling us how they'll hold on to a pair of shoes because they don't know what to do with it and they're waiting, they're dying for a solution and they would go out of their way to access a solution. And so we really saw that in the community of Los Angeles. And it's been really interesting as we've collected consumer data through this program too, and had hundreds of people sign up to join the movement and commit to bringing their shoes to Goodwill. And that to know that they're like going out of their way, they're putting those shoes in their car and they're driving to their local Goodwill to drop it off, which maybe doesn't sound so inconvenient, but we are all very busy people. And so sometimes that
Yeah.
is not as easy to do when we're all in our busy lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, it was so interesting to me that like New York had an LA climate week or had an LA climate week. New York had a New York climate week. There we go. Before I'm just so used to saying that combination of
Right.
words all together. New York had a climate week before LA had, and now we have one, and it's amazing. I just was like so shocked by that little tidbit of information because I was like, huh, like not that New York can't be sustainable. I would love every state to have a climate week if in an ideal world. But I was just so like intrigued by that because I was like, it's true. Like you look one way and you have the mountains, you look the other way and you have the ocean. And like it's just I feel like so nature oriented around here because how can it not be when like you have all these beautiful things surrounding you? Not that New York doesn't have beautiful things surrounding
Right.
you. I just feel like those beautiful things are a little bit more often like cool buildings and stuff like that.
Concrete, yeah, concrete
Um,
jungle.
I am thinking specifically of the city, I guess, but whatever. But yeah, I was like, it's just so that was so interesting to me because I was like, for me, like being in California as someone who's literally from the East Coast and was making that decision when going into the fashion industry, whether or not I wanted to be in New York or LA or wherever. And I was like, LA just felt like the place to be for me because of that climate space. And so I do think that this is like such a natural fit. And I'm so happy that you were able to start here because I was also then able to participate.
Yes, I started my journey in sustainable fashion out in Southern California, so I had a very similar experience to you as well. And so as we think about kind of where to bring the program next as well, we definitely want to continue to grow it in California. But something that's been really cool through the extent of launching the Footwear Futures Project has been all of the people who have reached out to us and said, when are you coming to Boston? When are you coming to New York? What about Portland?
Mhm.
And just someone recently wrote in to say, when is this going nationwide? And it's like been
Oh,
very cool to just think about like California was the perfect place to start this program, but there's so many places that we want to be able to extend this program to because I think, like I said earlier, people are hungry for this solution. So it'll be exciting to take the learnings we got by starting in LA and think how can we bring those to other parts of the country.
yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think that it's so good to hear that there are people out there who are like, I want this in my state, like, please come here. Because that I feel like is also just like sometimes the sustainability space can be very daunting and dark and scary. And you sometimes can feel, I feel like, alone or like you're fighting this fight alone. And so hearing that people are interested in it becoming nationwide, I feel like it's just such an encouragement of like keep going, and there are people that like are also fighting out there, and like surround yourself with community, and there are so many people that are interested in this space. And so I think that's really awesome that hopefully next year and so on it'll be even bigger and even better.
I love that. I love that thought because it takes all of us. It takes brands, it takes supply chain, but it takes consumers too. You are the ones who have shoes in your closet that will help fuel programs like
Yeah.
this. I love that visual.
Well, shoes are tricky. They're made of rubber, foam, glue, plastic, leather, and so that's, why they're so hard to recycle. So how specifically are you tackling this challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Footwear is complex. I actually spent my career in textile circularity before coming to footwear, and I don't think there's any circularity that is necessarily easy,
Hmm.
but footwear is extremely complex compared to textiles. The reason being for that is there's so many materials that are in our shoes. Our shoe could have on average around 35 different components and materials in it. And so when we think about building circular systems that rely on taking apart those materials and bringing those materials into more pure stream footwears, then it's really complex to tackle. But what's exciting is that there are other industries that are also complex that are similar to footwear that are figuring this out, like the electronics industry, for example, is a good example of another product that has many materials fasted together in its product and is doing this today. So, in our work at the Footwear Collective, we've really looked to other industries to guide us for this work. So, when it comes to footwear, we just have to approach it differently. So, the innovators that we're working with are not necessarily pre-processing these shoes and trying to cut off all of the parts because that would just take too long. So a lot of the innovation we see in footwear today is to actually grind the full shoe down. You almost say, this is too complex, so we just have to think we have to get there another way. And so they grind the shoe down and through many different technologies that exist today can sort that material into more pure streams so that then we can get the rubbers and the foams and the leathers and out, just as you said, all of those materials exist in footwear and find new homes for those materials. So it's complex, but there are people who are much smarter than I who are building technologies and innovation to help us kind of solve for the complexity. And I think the complexity is why for so long footwear has kind of been
Mhm.
ignored of that's a little it's like let's don't mention footwear. Let's figure out textiles first. And it's like I've been really encouraged by the founder of the Footwear Collective, Dr. Yuli Fuentes, who is like, no, just because it's complex doesn't mean that we can't do it because there are millions of shoes every single year that are going to landfill. So we need to be able to find a solution for
Yeah,
this.
no, completely. I think that I hope, and I know that they're all out there, but the people out in the world that are like just because it's hard doesn't mean we can't do it. Like we need all of those people in the sustainability space, please, because I think that it's something we, there's a lot. Sustainability is definitely, I guess, newer, like focusing on this. It's always been around, obviously. The planet's always been affected by this, but how we're handling it is like newer, and talking about this in general is newer. I mean, if you brought up sustainable fashion like 15 years ago, people would be like, literally, what is that? And even 6 years ago, when I like first heard about it, I was like, what is that? Like, that is not how the fashion industry is marketed. And so I think it's so, important that we're talking about this more, that we're hitting these struggles, and that, you know, in sustainability, a lot of things will be like, well, how do we scale this? And how do we make money from this? And no one's done this before, so how do we do it? Like, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done, I guess. And it's again just I feel like encouraging to hear that there are people and organizations that are like, you know what, this it kind of sucks to break down a shoe. It's kind of really hard, but that doesn't deter us from still
Office.
wanting to do it.
Like,
Um, because even when you think about like not even like, the back of a thrift store, but even just like a shoe store, like going to like the mall and going to a shoe store, there are so many shoes I feel like that are on display. And then on top of that, they have like all of the shoes with all of the sizes in the back. And so I'm like, that's like one store. And that kind of gives me anxiety to think about when I'm like, oh, like that's like so much. And obviously, like there are companies out there that are working on producing more sustainable footwear, which is great. But I don't know, I'm just thinking of like the mall down the street from me where there's
of
like
course.
a shoe store, and I'm like, God, there's so many shoes in there, and that's like ridiculous amounts, and none of them are actively being sustainable, and it's not great. And so I feel like just thinking of that in that context where it's like, okay, that's a lot of shoes, but now think of it as the amount of shoes that are in all of the stores, in all of the malls, and then all of the people that have all of the shoes in their house, and then all of the shoes that are being donated to thrift stores. And so it's like shoes are just such a big part of our lives. Like,
Absolutely. It's funny you say that. My first job was actually at a shoe store when I
oh
was
yeah.
16 years old, and definitely got lost in the back with all the boxes of shoes and struggling to find the right size. But there's a lot of shoes out there. I think the latest stat is that annually we produce on average 24 billion pairs of shoes. And again, I need to really check my numbers, but I'm pretty sure we've got close to 7 billion people on the planet. So we are creating a lot of shoes and need to be able to have solutions for
Yeah.
those shoes. And another thing, so I've talked a lot about what do we do with shoes at the end of their life? How do we develop more circular and recycling solutions for our footwear? But something else we think a lot about at the Footwear Collective and we work with our members on is design for circularity as well.
Hmm.
I think both need to be talked about. At the same time, we need to develop solutions for the shoes that exist today, but also as we think about innovation and design moving forward, how can we design think about a shoe's purpose? Because if a shoe is going to be something someone's going to buy and the goal is that they hold on to that shoe forever, we should build the shoe to be really, really durable and use ingredients in that shoe that will support it being durable. If we know that the shoe serves another purpose or maybe won't have as long as a life, we should really think about design for disassembly so that the shoes can be more easily less materials going into that shoe so they're not quite as complex, easier to take away some of those what we call like contaminants. And so this is another work stream that we have at the Footwear Collective to think about, how do we solve what's happening downstream right now, but how do we also look back upstream and think about all the shoes that are being designed today that places like Goodwill will receive in the next few years so that we can like work from both angles to be
Yeah.
able to this problem.
And that's so, so, so important. I wish that like every company that was making anything just thought about like, okay, when people are done with this, what will they be doing with it? Like, and how can we design something accordingly because of that? Because I just
Exactly.
think so, there's so many things nowadays, even just like in our everyday life that we don't even realize that are like one-off uses that are just literally just creating waste. And that's something that in my like sustainability journey, I've been doing a lot of like swaps too. Um, like just like paper towels, I feel like was one that I was like, I never thought about this. I had paper towels in my house my life, throughout my life. My parents would always just, have the paper towels. And then I didn't think about it and I was like, that's so wasteful. Like literally the point of it is to use it and then throw it out. That's the whole point of it. And so I like swapped when I moved into like my own place. I swapped and started just having like big things of like reusable, basically just like rags. And I told my dad that, and he was like, I'm really, really happy to hear that because he was like, that's how I grew up. Like when my dad was in his house with his parents, it was like you only used rags. They never had paper towels. And I was like, what the heck? Why, like, why'd you switch when I was growing up? Like, we could have been more sustainable. And he was like, I don't know. So I'm like, that's something that I didn't necessarily think about that I was like, there are just so many things out there that are literally just like created to use once and get rid of. I feel like Ziploc bags is another one
Right.
I made a swap for. I
I'm
have,
really guilty of like coffee cups. There are so
yeah,
many amazing, I'm based in New York City and there's so many amazing coffee shops. And I want to be personally better about bringing a reusable cup because when you
yeah,
take the time, there are solutions that exist, like your swap to have more rags on hand instead of paper towels. It just like, it takes kind of like some time and
yeah.
effort to put into adopting that
No,
practice.
oh, completely. I mean, that was something that I think like I've been on this journey for like 6 years and then I only think I did it like 2 years ago and I was like, why did I not think of that? But
Right.
I'm just like, there's just like I think it's so important to have people out there that are thinking about, okay, when we produce this thing, eventually it's going to end up somewhere, and what can we do about that when it ends up at that kind of end of life status?
That's what's exciting about the emerging policy in this space, the EPR and producer responsibility. It's kind of putting that thought process of like, what happens to this item at the end of its life, not necessarily on the consumer, but actually on the producer of that item, so that we can make sure that solutions and pathways exist for that item. I think that is such an important call out. And what's exciting is that there are many innovators. I got the chance to walk into I forget what they call it, but it's like a zero waste shop, a
Oh yeah.
refiller station. That's what they call it. Like I did not see anything like that growing up, and
Mhm.
I'm sure that if we look back into our history, we had more models closer to
Yeah.
that. But, like things like that, I love seeing. That inspires me in my own journey and sustainability to like see more people moving to practices.
Yeah, completely. I have had it on my bucket list to go to a refill shop for like years, and I cannot believe I've been to them, but I've never like brought jars of things so that I can
I
actually.
have not either, but I was at a friend's house recently who she was doing that and just like looking around, it's like, oh, she goes and she like gets her laundry detergent filled in
Yeah,
this thing and like they give her these pods for her dishwasher
dishwasher.
that
Yeah.
like just she refills in her glass jar. Like it
You
was cool to
do
see it
it.
practiced in real life and like but it is we're all busy people. It's like it takes effort and it takes time to be able
Yeah.
to adopt more sustainable practices.
No, completely. Well, on your website, you talk about the idea that the industry must unify to create global solutions for circularity. How do we go about unifying the industry in practice?
Absolutely. I think it comes back to this idea of working together pre-competitively. We also refer to it as collective action. We need everybody at the table. We need brands, we need supply chain, and we need consumers thinking about this challenge. So the way that we do that at the Footwear Collective is we've worked really closely with our members to map, okay, as we're thinking about sustainability and footwear circularity, where are things that we benefit from working together and where are things that like the brands own. So when we think about the infrastructure that needs to be built, that's something that is like on an industry wide level. When we think about the policy that we need to be able to support these systems, or even something we come across a lot in the space of sustainability is the language. Like I think there's a lot of importance in definitions and making sure we're talking about the same thing. And so that's also a big part of our work at the Footwear Collective is like creating cohesive language across the industry that helps us move together forward faster. But the Footwear Collective, we launched in 2023. We had 8 brands who joined us initially, and then another 3 who came along the way. So today we have 11 footwear brands and retailers that we are working with. And we continue to have conversations with other brands and retailers to invite even more people to the table because to be able to continue to scale this, we need everybody at the table, like I said. So I think it's an embrace of collective action, working together, and then another thing I like that we really embrace at the Footwear Collective is this idea of imperfect action. I think progress is stalled sometimes because we are scared that we're going to put out a solution that's not going to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, but and it's going to be critiqued before we have the chance to really be able to evolve that idea. So at the Footwear Collective, we just say first and forefront, this is going to be imperfect, but these challenges that we need to solve are really, really big and we need to take action. And so we embrace this idea of imperfect action, of every step matters, even if it's not perfect in getting us there. So I would say we need collective action and we need imperfect action to be able to unite the industry.
Completely. Well, I always like to end my podcast by asking, I feel like we did cover a good amount of tips, but what are some top tips for someone who's just starting their sustainable journey?
Oof. I remember starting my own sustainable fashion journey in college, and it felt like a little overwhelming because you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I need to switch everything in my closet. And it's like, no, wait, don't do
Oh,
that.
don't do
Most
that.
sustainable thing you can do is to love the things that are in your closet. A few tips, I guess, that come to mind is take some time to explore your own personal style. I think that that is something that's helped me a lot in my own journey with sustainable fashion is knowing what I like, who I am, and letting my clothing be a reflection of my values and not necessarily just like catching on to trends because they're so
Yeah.
easy. I'm saying this as somebody who spent the last decade in sustainable fashion. I fall for trends all the time. It's so easy. It
Hmm.
happens. And then when it comes to footwear, I think just know there's no silver bullet. There's not one solution for all of these things. We had a great conversation about repair. If you have some shoes you're thinking of getting rid of that you really loved, but maybe they're dirty, maybe there's an issue with them or the sole is wearing, you can go to a cobbler. Here in New York City, they exist in almost every single neighborhood. So once you actually like look around, you can find a lot of partners for repair. Maybe you have some shoes in your closet that you just never wore. Consider resale or donation. Bring those items to someone like Goodwill who can help match them with a new owner who will love them. Consider, I love the growth of Poshmark and Depop and those solutions today. Make some money from your closet too, and then just know your style and love the shoes that you have. I think that is like the biggest tip too. So, thank you so much, Lexi. This has been so fun to be able to talk sustainable fashion and all things footwear circularity.
Thank you so much for coming on. I learned so much. I love shoes, and I hope that everyone is encouraged to either wear your shoe to the end of its life, get it repaired, or take it to Footwear Collective and see what research that you guys can do with it. And I think it's just so important, everything that you're doing, and just educating people about this topic is so important because, again, as someone that's literally in the sustainable fashion space and is literally obsessed with shoes, I always focus more, I feel like, on the clothing aspect of it. And this has made me really sit down and be like, oh, wait, let me think about my shoes too. So I hope everybody also has that kind of effect happen to them. And thank you so, so, so much. Where can people find you on social media or anywhere else?
Absolutely. We would love for people to follow along on our journey. If you go to Footwear Futures with an S footwearfuturesproject.org. We are posting updates on the progress that the shoes that we collected in LA in October 2025, the progress that those shoes are making. So follow us there. You can follow us online at LinkedIn or as well Instagram. We are at the _Footwear Collective. And we are just at the forefront of this journey. This was the first step that we took, and I'm really excited and eager to see how we continue to scale and grow this work. So if you're interested in this and you're like, man, I'm not in California, reach out, let us know where you are, and that will help us inform where we'll take the Footwear Futures Project next. So again, thank you so much, Lexi, for having me on.
While you're at it, you can follow me on my socials. My Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all my name at Lexi Silverstein. That's Lexy, silver like the color, Stein. And remember to live a good life and live fucking good doing it.